So I suppose for us to get a bit of a grip on exactly what it is we're talking about here, and to get a bit of a sense around what we're dealing with, I thought we could probably just touch base on defining a couple of first principles. And for me, I think it's always good to appreciate, well, if we're talking about change management and if we want to understand how to engage and run projects better and get more return on investment from our initiatives, it's probably best to just appreciate that changing something is an act. It's as much a thing that happens as a result, but it's also a process. So when we talk about what change management is, the first thing that I'd like to put to you is that it's a structured approach to guiding people. It's both a noun and a verb. Change management is one of those things that, in some senses, it's almost a slight contradiction in terms, because managing change for those of us who are doing it professionally or on the receiving end of it will I think probably have some pretty gruesome war stories to say that change is almost anything but manageable. It's sometimes something that just happens regardless. And sometimes that is the case. And change can be a contact sport, that's for sure. But I suppose it doesn't mean we shouldn't have some degree of discipline. And there is certainly tools and techniques associated with the process that we can bring to it to facilitate it. And I think when we talk about this in an organizational enterprise environment, we need to appreciate that change, depending on how we're relating to the concepts and the outcomes and the results we're trying to achieve, change is very much a process, as much as a competency, as much as it is something that the organization has or has not. So let's just take a moment and have a pause. And I'd like to sort of get you to think about a recent project you're involved in. What was it like in terms of the outcome? How did it go? Have a think about for a moment, what were the critical success factors that in your head told you or evidenced to the sponsors, to the key stakeholders of the project? How did you know it went well? Was it a feeling that sort of was shared around the table? Was there distinct benefits that were drafted, written, tracked, reported against? Was there return of value through some kind of internal rate of return by way of saves? Was there some kind of decrease in cost basing and some kind of net present valuation standards you used, or earned value protocols? Maybe it wasn't anywhere near as scientific as any of the above. Maybe it was just something that the customers were happy. I think it's really important here that before we dive into how good or bad projects and initiatives go, I think the key thing here is to appreciate that most initiatives, if they're well defined and there is a clearly understood way to go about achieving that initiative, and I'm going to talk to that a little bit more in just a moment, then there is a far greater chance of that initiative succeeding. Typically, and you can read the stats there, you probably have been while I've been talking, you can see there that, and depending on the literature that I've read, initiatives from some of the results from the big accounting firms and big consulting firms, and certainly from our personal experience, would say that a majority of projects do not deliver what they say they're going to deliver, despite our best efforts. And there are a whole bunch of reasons for that. Now, we also have some great success stories, and just to give you an example, at the moment I'm working on a program of work that has been in the making, using a fairly experiential sort of viral type of development, and the initiatives for a large financial organisation, and this organisation's investing about $10 million over the next 3 years to build a new leadership framework. They want a new way of work. They want their leaders to have a clear, consistent leadership experience where they're actually doing what they're paid to do, as opposed to being tied up with administrative detail, as opposed to being hogtied by reporting requirements. Now, that doesn't mean governance isn't important, but they're investing a significant amount of time and effort and capital expense in project costs. And the return on that they estimate to be in the tens of millions, because the ability to make decisions quickly, the ability to have a consistent employee experience, the ability to feel like when you go to work you're actually achieving things. These are very intangible types of things, but they deliver quite tangible results. And there's some great work done by Gallup in their research on the human sigma that tells how we can take experiences of people through initiatives and through projects and translate that directly into productivity increases and profit increases. But the key takeaway from this is, in short, if a project is not well conceived, then it has a significantly impaired chance of achieving a great result. So if we think about it from the point of view of how do projects go so wrong? Maybe you've been involved in a project or a program of work or even a small initiative, and it didn't quite go as well as you thought. Did you take the time to consider what was it that did not allow it to go to plan? Was it poorly scoped? Was it inadequately resourced? Were there constraints in terms of time and people? It's interesting. As part of my prep and for this big assignment, I'm working with the financial organisation. I looked at some statistics around change, and I found that there's actually a greater correlation, and this assumes you know how to read cards. There's a greater correlation between winning at the blackjack table than successfully landing a merger and acquisition. And I thought that was an interesting analogy. But I suppose the key thing to consider when we talk about what is it that's so critical about change is the three key elements, and according to ProSci's PCT triangle, those three key elements are about leadership, project management, and change management. Now, if we just touch on the first one for a moment, on leadership and sponsorship, I would have to say, through personal experience, and no doubt you've all got stories to tell as well, how if the person above you is not on with the initiative, with the project, or if they're just not fully behind it and out there, you know, supporting it, your project is really going to struggle from the outset. The same goes with project management. Now, there's a really key delineation that I want to draw here between project management and change management. There is definitely a blurry space that exists between these two concepts. The easiest distinction that I like to use is just simply project management is about the technical side of the change. That might be about deliverables. It might be about results, benefits to be realized, products to be released, implementation, schedules, that kind of stuff. That stuff's all really, really important. And that's the realm of project management and the disciplines that project management brings to it. Change management, though, is very much about the people side. Change management is about, if you like, the soft side of it, or as Tom Peters likes to say, it's the soft stuff that's actually the really hard stuff. And I think if you imagine the picture in my head when I see this triangle is very much like a three-legged stool. If you're trying to seat something on a three-legged stool and one of those legs is not robust or adequate enough to hold what you're trying to land on it, it's probably going to fall over. And I think intuitively, that's just a really nice way to do a bit of a gross error check. Now, there's some great tools out there, and there's some work that Management Effect has completed, and we've got lots of strategies and techniques around the execution of change risk assessment methodologies and change maturity models. And if you like, if you're familiar with the project management bodies of knowledge, be that a PMBOK, be that a ProSci, or any enterprise type project management methodologies, there is a significantly increasing body of change management knowledge, and there's a number of tools that we use to help assess that, to help give us insights to understand, hey, what's the likelihood of this working? And And if you like, that answers the so what question. But the now what question is, what can we do about it? What are the actionable insights that we can be provided with? Now, if we can cover off those three legs, then we're right. But